to another episode of the Luli Health Podcast. My name is Grace Youngson. I'm the founder and president of Luli Health, and I'm so excited because today I am joined by Marlee Dunwoody. She has an incredible pregnancy story, and I think it will just be like so encouraging to hear her story. And so I'm really, really excited to have a real honest conversation about this today. So thank you so much for coming on, Marlee.
Yeah, it's so good to talk with you again. Our first phone call was just it felt like old friends, and I'm hoping to continue that conversation today. I love your heart, so I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Yeah. So Grace found me via my podcast, which I just started. It's called Embracing Unplanned Pregnancy, and it's basically where I walk women through practical ways to navigate an unplanned pregnancy and all the really unforeseen challenges that you find yourself in. And I decided to start that podcast because I've been there. um, I I got pregnant with my son, and it was unplanned, and it completely changed my whole life. And it was a really, really hard transition at first, but through the process of becoming a mother, I was completely transformed. And so now I'm a birth doula and I have this podcast, and I just want women to be encouraged when they have a pregnancy that it's not the end of their life, it's the end of a chapter, and it's the beginning of their life. It really is. Life before motherhood is just it's just a precursor. Your life really starts when you have a kid. Not to say that anyone without a kid is not, if you're not a mother, not to say that you're any less valuable, but when you do have a child, it's so transformative and powerful. And it's really just the greatest journey. And I want to encourage women that are walking into that when they didn't plan on it. That can be big. So
Yes.
I hope that answers your
Yeah.
question.
I love what you said about the fact that you can feel like your life is over when you're in that discovery of an unplanned pregnancy, because I think a lot of people don't really talk about that side of it. And even if it's not unplanned, I think there is a part of us as women that's like, oh wow, I'm stepping into a new chapter. There are parts of my life that are kind of going to die because now I have a little one to take care of. And so even whether it's planned or unplanned, it's a huge transition. And so I hope that this podcast today will help women just navigate that transition. And yes, you're right, I discovered you listening to your podcast, and I was like, I need to bring this lady on who has such a great story, because I think that it's so important that we share our stories. And, there's so many women out there who can relate to so many things that you said. And so I'm so excited to have you on. And what I find so exciting as well is how your story is now part of the purpose of your life, and that you're a birth doula. I don't know if you want to touch a bit more on that. But just everything that you're doing now, even what you said at the beginning, some women may feel like their lives are over and they have no idea what is actually going to come out of that story.
Yeah, I read a post this morning before my son woke up. I try not to scroll during the day, but there's that like golden hour, like right
Mhm.
before he wakes up, that I have some time to like zone out. And someone was posting about she was 35 and she had met the love of her life really late in life, and they want to have a kid. They want to get pregnant, but she's like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Like, I want to be a mother, kind of, but like I see all these sacrifices I'm gonna have to make. I've spent the last 15, 20 years pouring myself into my career, and she wasn't ready for that priority shift. So you're
Mm.
totally right. Even if it is planned, there are so many factors to consider. And what I think is so beautiful about that lady's story is that you can tell when someone has a slight fear of motherhood or like a massive fear of motherhood, it means that they're taking it seriously. And I
Mhm.
think that a lot of women walk into motherhood and they don't take it so seriously, and then they're caught off guard. I think encouraging women that if they find out they're pregnant and it sends a shock down their spine and they can't breathe for a minute, that's actually a good thing. because it shows how much you value motherhood, how important it is to you, and how seriously you're taking it. And that's really the first step, because you can't ignore pregnancy. With pregnancy, like, it takes up your whole body. So
Yeah.
you can't avoid it, and you have to confront it. You have to grow from it. You like will like literally grow, physically grow, but also in all these other ways.
Absolutely. When we talked on the phone, I asked you what was the biggest battle that you faced in this unplanned pregnancy, and you shared that it was actually the mental battle. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about that. But before you do, can you walk us through just a bit of the story of discovering that pregnancy and how that all came about?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's important to hear some of the context. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background of where I was at in life, because it really, you can't understand why. Like I say in my podcast all the time, like, if you don't want to get pregnant, there's a reason. It could be financial, it could be your living circumstances, it could be countless things, right? So I want to give a little bit of context. So I was working full time for the military, for the Army, and I was a workaholic, very much so. I actually kind of developed a name for myself for working longer and harder than anyone else. And I was doing home renovations on my old home by myself, because I don't know if you know this, but home renovations are freaking expensive. So I was doing everything myself, and also I like take a lot of pride in like being able to do stuff. So it was totally a pride and an ego thing. So I was doing all that. I really got into like rescuing animals. So I had a bunch of animals that I was taking care of. I got to the point where if anyone needed like a home for an animal, I would be the place that they brought it to. So I ended up in this place where I was just filled to the brim. I had so much going on. I had no extra time, and that was my choice. Like, I made it that way. That's how I developed my life into that on purpose. I'm an adult. I made those decisions, but also it was hard. There wasn't room for error in my life at the time. And I also had developed some pretty severe mental health things, anxiety, pretty severe anxiety, and really severe insomnia. I wasn't sleeping. There was all this stuff, and there was no room. There wasn't room for what I already had in my life, and there definitely wasn't room for a baby. So I had been single for a long time. I had a relationship that ended years before, not well. So I had kind of sworn off any type of vulnerability at all. I was like, I'm just not putting my heart in anyone else's hands ever again. Then I met my now husband at the time. Basically, long story short, we ended up hanging out, going on this trail run together, and it was like the most fun. It turned into like a whole day thing, and it was so much fun. He's just such a fun person, and we just hit it off. And I think immediately we both kind of knew that we were for each other. But my husband he has such a children's heart, like a child's heart. He's wonderful. So I think he was more acknowledging of it than I was. I was more like resistant to it. But we ended up very quickly after meeting and starting dating that getting pregnant. When I found out I was pregnant, it was like my whole world stopped. I was in complete shock, not just like mental shock, but I had like physical manifestations of like shock. Like, I was trembling, I couldn't breathe. It was terrible. So that's kind of how I found out. And so that started this cascade of my current life today. We got married very soon after that. 3 months after, we got married when I was, I think, 15 weeks pregnant. So we'd only been together for a few months. We went on a honeymoon. Um, he was gone for like 3 months out of the pregnancy at Army schools. I was still working like crazy. We had to buy a house. I had to sell my house. It was just this whole cascade of things. And it took me a really, really long time to process this pregnancy and to be okay with it. So that's kind of the story of the beginning of the pregnancy. And looking back now, it's a different person. It's just a different person. That person, when I found out I was pregnant, was not a mother yet.
Mm,
I didn't have that mother's heart. I didn't have the compassion. I didn't have the clarity. That's one thing. Motherhood gives you this immense clarity. You know what's your priorities. And back then, just a few years ago, I didn't have any
mm.
priorities. I mean, I had so many that they were all top priority, and you can't live that way. So that's kind of the story. And it led to where I am today.
Wow.
So I hope I filled in the holes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think there's always so many circumstances that go on around an unplanned pregnancy because, oftentimes I feel like, and this is partly why I'm passionate about the topic of healthy relationships, and just mental health and being whole in yourself, because oftentimes we can kind of like go down a path that, when we're looking for things to maybe like soothe the craziness in our lives or whatever, and it can open doors to like, oh, I didn't mean to do that necessarily, I can totally relate to being like so busy and like filling my life with so many things, and I think though that that is pretty reflective of our culture today when it comes to like, okay, women, you need to be like strong and girl boss, and especially if you have had some kind of negative past experience relationally, it's so easy to respond to that. And it's really interesting then because when you do come into a healthy relationship, and I'm saying this partly from experience, um, and you actually allow yourself to be soft, it's like the most beautiful thing. And I think motherhood is one of those areas as well where you allow yourself to shift into that identity. And it's really cool that you're saying it brings so much clarity to your life. What I love about your story too is, you kind of mentioned you're like, there's no margin for error in my life. And you feel like everything just was like, oh my gosh. And I think that so many times we often feel that, like, okay, I cannot make a mistake here. And it's so amazing how, obviously, we don't want to purposely go out and like do things that may lead to something which is going to be a challenge to get through, but at the same time I think sometimes we hold our lives like so tightly, it's so easy to be like so stressed out, and even knowing that, okay, if I do make a mistake, like, it's going to be okay. And I think that comes back to the whole mental battle, and that comes back to the conditioning of culture, which tells us like, okay, if you get pregnant, your life is over, career's over, just have an abortion because that's the quick fix so that you can continue on with your life because this is like too big of a deal. And it's basically just like very much feeding anxiety and fear. It's not telling us as women, actually, we're capable of that. Like, apparently, we're capable of everything else. We can be entrepreneurs, we can do all these things, but somehow we can't be moms, which we're actually built for. So I love that about your story, that it just shows like, it just dispels all of those things.
Yeah. Well, so a few things. So you said that our culture tries to get you to normalize being completely full, have your days packed full and to do all the things other than motherhood,
Mhm,
of course. But I think we have to look at, and this is a big part of becoming a
mhm,
mother, is self-examination. And we have to look at why you got to that
mhm,
point. And for me, in hindsight, looking back at my story, now, in hindsight now that I have this wisdom and this experience, I can see like, oh, I was damaged in this
mhm,
way, or I was protecting myself in this way, or I was influenced in this way. I was afraid of
mhm,
this. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to find value, but I didn't get value from this person, so I put it in this thing instead. And I think that when you're walking into the situation of an unplanned pregnancy, you have to realize what are you holding
mhm,
on to? You're holding on to all these things that have replaced actual healing.
mhm,
And for some people that's more true than others, like maybe you're in a really toxic relationship. Like you need to get out of that relationship now. It's time. But a lot of times, they should have done that before pregnancy. but now it's
Mhm.
real. Now they have to take it seriously, and now they have to do the self work of saying, why am I staying here? What is it about myself that makes me think that I'm only worthy of this? Um, and do that self work. So it's self-worth work.
Yes.
um, so it's just so much self-examination.
I was going to ask you about how women can prepare for motherhood to relieve that stress of an unplanned pregnancy. And I think you even already started the conversation around that of that self-worth because it's difficult to be healthy for someone else and as a mother and if the man is in the picture as a partner, wife, whatever, it's difficult to be healthy in that if you're not healthy in yourself and knowing your self-worth. And so, and I know that you're really passionate about helping women plan and prepare for that. And honestly, it's like, I think back to being in school and like I would feel so much more anxious if there was a test that I had not prepared for. But when I had prepared for it, it's like you still have, some nerves, but you're like, no, I prepared for this. Like I feel more ready. And I think it's very, very common among women to feel really unready to be a parent. That's not really a word, but anyway, a lack of readiness to be a parent, which I think no matter how much you prepare, there's always going to be some of those nerves. It's something new you're stepping into. But how can women better prepare to just relieve some of that stress?
Hmm. I don't think that there's one solid answer for any particular person, but um, on a spiritual level, knowing that God created your child and that He will give you the capability to mother that child, whether it's you need to escape a relationship that you're in, or you have all these other things to figure out, whether it's finances, whether it's your work situation, whether it's like anything, whether you live on an unsafe street or like whatever it is, the foundation of it is that God put you in this position. He created this child. And I have talked to woman after woman after woman who, whether it's their first kid or their ninth kid, God provides. They don't run out of money, even though they really, really should run out of money. They find a home to live in, they figure things out. And even these really, really hard situations, doors open. And that doesn't make them easier. But again, that back to that clarity. God gives you so much clarity being a mother because yes, we're designed for it, but we don't know how to do it. I mean, it's this massive thing raising another human being. You can't do it alone. But also, I think it's really, really important to acknowledge your challenges. I think so many women, they find out they're pregnant, and then it's like this big brick wall that they're facing. And instead of going up to the brick wall and labeling all the bricks and saying, this is a challenge I have to overcome, and this is a challenge I have to overcome, they just see this big, overwhelming
Mm.
brick wall. When really they could start deconstructing that brick wall by tackling one challenge at a time. Again, doesn't make it easier, but it makes it a little bit more manageable. And sometimes those fixes complicate life, right? Like, let's say you are in a domestic violence situation, you're pregnant, and you know you cannot bring this baby back to that home. It is not safe for you, it is not safe for them. And if you bring that baby home, you're never going to leave, type of thing. Going to a women's shelter might really complicate things, but it's a step in the right direction. And it's a step advocating for your baby. And the power of advocating for your baby is so great. When you start doing that, that's when you start stepping into motherhood. And you get this overwhelming empowerment and this overwhelming love. It's really love. And some people, the love comes first and the advocating comes second. But really, if you just start and you say, it is my job to advocate for this child, it's my job to protect this child, the love will follow. And part of that is because pregnancy hormones are just crazy. And 9 months is a long time, so you're going to transform. But also, there's something about like it's like rescuing an animal like on the side of the street. You see a dog lost on the side of the street. If you were to keep driving, you'd never think about that dog again. But if you pick up that dog and you get to know it and you care for it and you invest time and energy into it, all of a sudden you like love this dog and don't want to give him up ever again. And it's just like that, except even bigger because it's like a baby that's in your belly with you 24/7, and you feel that baby and you feel the physical changes of pregnancy all the time, and you're one, like you are really, really one being for 9 months. And I go with clients with, on my podcast, I talk about this. It's the 3T rule. If you can't handle something today, tomorrow, or this week, it needs to go out of your mind or be written down somewhere and put aside, because there's no reason to carry around things that you can't achieve right now. So breaking down, and if you have this big thing like I need to buy a house, you're not going to be able to buy a house in a week, right? But what you can start doing is download the apps, start scrolling, set up a viewing, that type of thing. Those are things that you can do today, tomorrow, and this week. So break up those challenges and just start. And what you'll see is going to happen is that doors will open, challenges will unfold in front of you, and they won't exist anymore. Or you'll realize that these things that you thought were really big and really challenging, they don't really matter. So the 3T rule is really good, because if you can handle it right now, handle it. If not, put it aside on a piece of paper. Maybe revisit it in a week or two. And it's funny how many of those things just you'll be like, why did I even write that down? Like those things don't matter at all. So those would be the practical advice. But and I think that everyone's situation is different, but just get rid of the unknowns. And that alone will just provide peace and clarity and guidance. So you can kind of see your path from now until baby comes, and then thereafter. And the last thing is that you can prepare, but you can't always plan. So do the mental work of preparing for whatever's going to happen. Develop those coping mechanisms, develop a good support system, and build space into your life so that um, you can prepare for challenges to come without having to like plan through them. So I hope that makes sense. The difference between planning and preparing is something that a lot of women don't like, because they want to know exactly what how everything's gonna pan out, but that's not realistic. It's not realistic in pregnancy, labor, delivery, postpartum, or literally ever in motherhood.
It's not realistic in life
So
in
I hope,
general.
for sure. But especially when you have this little human being and it's a separate entity from you, but also completely reliant
Mhm.
on you.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
yeah.
extremely helpful. I really liked your brick analogy, because yes, it can just feel like, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed, and just being able to take it one piece at a time. And I think that having a support system, having people around you, like if you're just really struggling on one thing, like call up a friend and share the issue with them, because I guarantee you, because they're not in such of the emotional state that you are, they will see clearer on how to solve that thing. And so I definitely think it's something that, shouldn't be gone alone. And what I also thought about was, when you were giving the example of you may be in, a domestic violence situation, you need to get out so baby's not hurt. I've seen so many instances where women have been in bad situations, got pregnant unexpectedly, and then had to make these choices, which seem like challenges, but actually the baby has like literally saved their life and kind of forced them to do what they
Yeah.
should have done all along. And so it really depends on the perspective that you look at that with, because actually, if you look at it from a positive angle, it's like, oh my goodness, if you're struggling with drugs or something, it's like now I actually have like a reason to get off of drugs. And we had one mom who we helped who was in that exact situation, was actually doing drugs when she got pregnant, unbeknownst to her that she was pregnant. And it's like when she first discovered she was pregnant, it felt like, oh my goodness, can't do this. Like she was thinking, okay, I'm just going to get an abortion. I can't do this. And then when she ended up going in for an ultrasound, because she had taken a couple of Plan Bs and was still pregnant, and saw her baby on the ultrasound, and she was just like, oh my goodness, like Actually, she felt so much relief in that moment that her baby was still alive. And now I look at her life and it is so turned around because she had a reason to get off drugs. She had a reason to get out of the bad relationship she was in. And now she's just so grateful to be a mom. And it's crazy because it was definitely the same thing of it, such a huge mental battle. I don't think that she would have ever fully pictured how beautiful her life could be now. And yes, there are still challenges, but there were tons of challenges in her life before. It's not like this baby, I mean, it does bring more like other unique challenges, but it also kind of solved some of the problems too. So it really depends how you look at it. I think a lot of times in life, there isn't really an easy route. Like you choose your hard. If you look to drugs or alcohol or sex to numb your pain, you're actually going to still be experiencing a lot of hard things like heartbreak, like addiction. So you're choosing your hard, or you can choose to heal from it, which may be kind of hard in the moment, but you're choosing future freedom and wholeness. So I think it's so interesting how, I just challenge any women listening to this to take that fresh perspective of like, okay, what if I actually saw this pregnancy as a beautiful new chapter in my life, as a potential blessing, as a potential turning point. And so, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, you've talked a bit about your faith. This podcast, we have everyone listening to this, whether they believe in Jesus or not. And so, I would love for you to just explain a little bit of what that means to you and how women who maybe don't believe in God, like how they could relate still.
Yeah. Well, I'm like kind of choked up from the story of that woman, so let me, gather myself. Um, I had a friend ask me, she said, I hope this isn't overstepping, but I just have to know. As a Christian, how did you end up pregnant without being married? Is that something that your church really frowns upon, or is it more accepted in your church, or how did you cope with that? And my church is not accepting of that, but they do love all babies. And the first person that I told about my pregnancy was a friend from church. We're not like crazy close, but I trust her. She's a great mom. She's pregnant with her fourth baby right now. Um, and she was so loving and empathetic and compassionate and gentle with me. When I first got pregnant, my thought was, I already had so much fear around motherhood because I didn't have the best examples, I guess you could say. But also my life wasn't supportive of being a mother and all these things. And I remember seeing this. I think I was bringing my mom to a doctor's appointment or something. And I saw this lady she was probably my mom's age, but she looked very, very much older. And she was talking to us. She was nice. But turned out she was there because her son, who was probably in his 40s, was an alcoholic. He'd been in and out of prison or jail. I don't know which one, probably like drug and alcohol things. So probably didn't go away for long, but he'd been in and out of jail for years and years. He'd struggled. He couldn't drive himself to the doctor. Like that's how I don't want to call anyone names, but like that's the state of his life at 40 something years old. And all I could picture myself was being in her shoes. And I hate to say this, but like I feel like if you are going to die and not know that your children are okay without you, that's like failing as a parent. I feel like there aren't many standards for parenting because, like, it's wild. It's wild, right? Like, my kid fell down the stairs and just like rolled onto like concrete yesterday. So, like, things happen. It's wild. But I feel like that, like, that's one thing I want to accomplish as a parent. And in that moment, that was like the image I had in my head. It's like, I'm going to be this person taking care of her children because I'm not equipped to raise a successful human. So anyway, I had this image in my head and it was really, really hard to cope with because I just didn't want that. And it was like, not only my lifetime of like dealing with all that, dealing with the challenges of raising a troubled child, But also like my kid's whole life is going to be hard. Anyway, I kind of got into the word, got into the Bible, prayed a lot. I realized that when Jesus died on the cross, he took away my need to fix my sin. He did that for me. He went through that really gruesome, awful death to die for all of our sin. All I had to do, my job from that point, was to get onto the right path as quickly as possible so that I could get back to being a Christian mother, a Christian wife, and learn how to do these things that were so foreign to me. And now it's time to lean into God more, like you were before you got pregnant. Um, and it's time to just continue down this path of doing the right thing. And that's all we can do as Christians. So I hope that kind of answers the question of what being a Christian means to me, especially in my unplanned pregnancy story.
That's good, and I think that, it's really interesting because spirituality plays a huge role in mental health. And I mean, most Americans, do identify as believing in God. So that's a little bit wrong of me to say that most women listening to this don't believe in God, but maybe they don't have that relationship with Him. And I think this can be especially a touchy issue with the whole God thing because we know that God's parameters for relationships is that sex is within marriage. And so when you find yourself in that unplanned pregnancy outside of marriage, it feels like you want to run away from God in that situation because you feel like you, I suppose, broke that relationship there. And I think what's so beautiful about your story as well is that that is not how God is with us. God just wants relationship with us. Like he is so happy. Actually, he wants to be the person we run to in our darkest times. And as a parent, one of my goals in the future when I'm a parent one day is I want my kids to come to me in those dark moments. I don't want them to be like, okay, I'm not telling mom about that because she's gonna, be like disappointed in me or all judgy at me or something like that. Obviously, there are core values and morals and beliefs we have in life, but every single one of us is human. And I definitely think that for any women who are listening who are in the church, I have been involved with lots of moms and or young girls who have like got pregnant in church, and that's always the thing, is the shame side of it. I remember I was out in California one time and a 16-year-old girl came up to me in a church at the end of service and just cried like in tears and then was whispering to me that she is pregnant. And she's like, "You're the only person I've told." And I was visiting, like, she didn't even know me. It was a crazy situation. I think what opened her heart to trust me was the fact that I was young like her. Um, and she's like, "I've told no one, I'm so scared of the shame." And what's so interesting is I know that church. I know they would have come around her and supported her. They wouldn't have been like, "Oh my gosh, get out," kind of thing. And I will also say some churches, unfortunately, have done a bad job at responding to this. And there are some women who have been through some horrible things at the hands of Christians when they have found themselves in this situation. But it's so easy to get caught up in that shame and in that fear. And I will also say, if you're a young woman who is in a church that is going to boot you out, do not take that as representative of how all churches would respond. There are lots of churches out there that would actually wrap their arms around you and support you. And there is something called Embrace Grace. You can go online and look them up. They're linked on our website, but they actually have motherhood support groups for moms experiencing unplanned pregnancies. They take place in churches. They do such a beautiful job where they will literally give you like a free baby shower, meet with you once a week, and you're just able to be encouraged. And so I think it's important that we start to reframe that narrative within the church around this issue. So yeah, so I love that you touched on that a bit, but I wanted to close out this podcast. I think we talked, about the challenges of an unplanned pregnancy and how that can be tough, but I would love to hear from you just about the joys of motherhood and like what are some things where you're just like, wow, I wish I knew how beautiful this actually was beforehand.
It's a big topic.
Yeah, it kind of is.
It's
Sorry, I
also
gave
like,
you a very broad question.
no, no. I love it. It's like my favorite thing to talk about. Um, and every day, I feel like every single day I pray that my son grows up and has his own babies because I just want this love for him. Like I want him to feel the love that I have because it's so great. It's so big. It's just all consuming. Kids are just the best, you know? You can be sitting there pouting about something, your mind can be wrapped up in all this drama, and then your child walks into the room doing something ridiculous, and you have to laugh. You have to laugh. Um, they really are just such a source of joy. They really make your priorities so, so, so clear. So if before you're a mother and you feel like you can't, you're always multitasking, you're doing a bajillion different things at once, kids have a way of grabbing you, bringing you into the present moment, and just they're always having fun. You know, they learn through having fun. So they pull you in and they pretty much make you enjoy your day. But being a mother, it fills you with a love that's just unlike anything else you'll ever experience. It's like not humanly possible.
I think, if I can stop
I
you for a second there, I was just gonna jump in and say,
sure,
like,
yeah.
I think that's such a cool aspect of it, is I actually don't think that we fully kind of know ourselves or are able to experience, like, everything that's inside us without having kids, or at least, like, being around kids if for some reason or another, you don't have kids. But for me, like, I grew up in a great family, very like, I suppose, family oriented. I'm one of three. And but what's interesting is I also grew up, I mean, I'm the oldest, and I think this is a little bit like how the oldest can be sometimes. Although I suppose I feel like it can swing in two directions. As the oldest, you can kind of become the second mom sometimes to your younger siblings, and then all you want to do is be a mom in the future. Or you become like super career oriented, which was me, 100%, very, very career oriented. And it was so interesting because I got roped into helping work with kids. And I was like, gosh, I'm embarrassed to say that I was like 21 and had really never fully worked with kids before. And so I was put in a room of like 11 4-year-olds and I was supposed to take care of them. And I was like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. And what was so interesting is I went into that like kind of like they're gonna end up crying, I'm gonna end up crying. Like this is not, I don't know if this is gonna be a positive experience. And I just didn't have the appreciation for kids. And not that I didn't like them or anything like that. I just didn't have such an appreciation. And what was so crazy is after working with them, and that was something I did each week for a while, just volunteering, I like was like, "Whoa, there is a part of Grace that I didn't know existed that like loves kids and that also has a bigger ability and capacity for love than I realized." Because sometimes being so career oriented, I was like, "Whoa, am I like incapable of love?" Like my life is more about me sometimes, you know? And I think it's actually
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
sad when we don't experience that in our lives. Like, I'm so grateful that I now am like, okay, the best thing that could happen to me would be to be a mom and to have a little baby in my arms. Like, oh my gosh, that would trump every achievement I have in my life. And there's a balance. Like, I still want to achieve things and do things, but like that would be priority. And I think it's so interesting because the love that you're talking about, like, I'm excited to experience that one day, but that's such an incredible experience. The world is always selling us on experiences of like fear of missing out, of having sex with this one person or something like that. And it's like, actually, this is literally like the greatest experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Kids, even if you don't love kids, seeing your own child learn a new thing and is just, it's really incredible. Even if you're so stressed, even if you got a lot going on, even if finances are tight, those kids are still going to grow and learn and play, and they love you so much they rely on you. I think that's something that's talked down on a lot, is like, oh, your kids are going to need you forever, you're never going to be able to take a vacation alone, you're never going to do this, you're never going to do this. but it is such a blessing to be wanted and needed by another human being. It's this immense purpose for your life that you cannot possibly understand until you're living it. A little story, I was talking to a mom at the mom group that I'm in about how she wasn't even half the person that she was. She's pregnant with her second right now. And she was just reminiscing on how back before she had her daughter, who I think was 2, she wasn't even half the woman that she was. Because when you see your child growing and learning and depending on you and needing you, you show up for
Mm,
life in a way that's so fiery, so passionate, so purposeful. Like, you're a force that can't be stopped when you are living for your child. And that's really, really hard to understand until you feel the love for your child. And a lot of people feel like they should feel love for their child when they're pregnant. And sometimes, yeah, that could be true. A lot of people, though, they don't feel like that really maternal love for their child until they're holding their baby in their arms. And I think I identify with that. I had like a lot of, I wanted to protect my child. I was very motivated. I take everything I do like really seriously. So when I wanted to have an all natural, unmedicated birth, I knew I was going to do it. And I took it very seriously because I knew the benefits and I knew that this baby was relying on me and I knew all that. And it was like a mission. But once I actually felt the love for that baby when he was born and he was in the NICU and I saw how much he needed me. Like he needed me. I just knew my mama heart knew that he needed me. And it was in that moment that I realized this child needed me in a way that I've never been needed before and in a way that I can't possibly understand. And it's just such a powerful purpose to have. And so people think about all the challenges of pregnancy and of labor and of delivery and of postpartum and of motherhood. But if you look at those challenges without the context of, I love this child so much that I will literally not sleep for days on end voluntarily to sacrifice myself for him because of this overwhelming love for him. And when you look at these challenges in the context of this immense love, they just seem a lot
mm.
smaller.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that, and please feel free to talk more, but I just wanted to jump in. I feel like, it's interesting because we see an epidemic among young people, men and women, but women, a lot of this like search for purpose and meaning in our lives. And I think part of it is that
Hmm.
search for love and that desire to be needed and wanted.
For sure.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Marley, for coming on. This has been such a fun conversation. I really loved it. And can you please, before we go, can you please share with people how they can connect with you online, social media?
Yeah. Um, First of all, listen to my podcast. You know, all the updated information is on there in the show notes. That's Embracing Unplanned Pregnancy. Otherwise, on Instagram, it's Marlee the doula. Excuse me. Allergies. Um, Otherwise, website is fortressbirthandhome.com. But that's all in the show notes of the podcast, so don't feel like you need to remember it. And if you have recommendations for the podcast, I'm always accepting those on Instagram. If you wanted to message me, thing.
I love that. I love that. And we will include the link in the show notes, the various links as well to Molly's socials and website and everything. So you can reach out to her. And I think I encourage women to reach out to Molly because it's so powerful when you do have someone exactly what you said that you can relate to and who has been there before. And so thank you so much for your time and for being on the podcast today. I super appreciate you. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We release a new podcast every week. So make sure you subscribe, follow wherever you're listening to this podcast. And we'll see you again next week.